The snowstorm rolled across the prairie like a wounded animal crying in the night. Inside the old cabin, the lantern flickered weakly, barely pushing back the cold shadows. Elena, the giant bride who towered a head above any normal person, stood near the window with tears hidden by the dim light. She had strength in her bones but cracks in her heart, and tonight, Christmas Eve, she felt every fracture. Luke, the lonely cowboy, watched her silently, unsure how to reach a woman who looked unbreakable yet felt shattered inside. Luke had lived years alone, wrapped in a silence that felt safer than any company. But since she arrived, his cabin felt warmer, fuller, almost human again. Still, Elena barely spoke. She flinched whenever someone stepped too close, as if every kind gesture carried a hidden blade. Luke didn't know her past, only rumors, whispers of a family that treated her like a burden and a world that feared what it could not understand. He never pressed her, yet tonight something in her eyes begged for truth. The fire crackled, but its warmth barely touched her. She stood like someone preparing to run, or someone expecting to be abandoned first. Luke didn't move closer, but his voice softened like freshly fallen snow. "Elena, you don't have to pretend you're fine." She stiffened. No one had ever noticed her pain without turning it into a weapon. His gentleness confused her. She looked at him with a fear that wasn't of him, but of what honesty might cost. Luke stepped forward slowly, one careful breath at a time. "Show me the truth," he said, not as an order, but as a plea, gentle, steady, warm. Her lips parted, trembling, her hands shaking though she always carried the weight of whole trees without flinching. The giant bride felt smaller than she ever had. "If I show you," she whispered, "you'll leave." Luke shook his head. "Not unless you push me out." She swallowed hard, afraid of hope and terrified of losing it. She turned away, wiping her face angrily as if tears betrayed strength. "People don't stay when they see what I really am." Luke's chest tightened. He knew loneliness, but hers felt deeper, heavier, shaped by years of being misunderstood. He took one more step. "I'm not people," he answered. "I'm just a man trying to understand the woman standing in front of me." The words landed softly, but she shook her head as though they hurt more than comforted. The storm outside howled like a warning. Inside, Elena reached for her left sleeve, hesitating before pulling the fabric up. A long scar carved across her arm. Deep, old, brutal. Not from a fall, not from work, but from someone's cruelty. Luke didn't gasp, didn't pity. His eyes stayed steady, anchoring her like a quiet harbor in a violent sea. She waited for disgust, fear, rejection. Instead, Luke whispered, "Who did that to you?" The question wasn't sharp. It was protective, like someone would draw a gun if she spoke a name. She looked away, voice cracking. "Someone who said they loved me." The words shattered something inside Luke, anger rising like wildfire, but he kept his voice calm. "You're safe here," he said. "No one's touching you again." But safety was a promise she no longer believed in. She lowered her sleeve quickly, as if hiding the truth meant she could erase it. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I break things when I feel too much. The world doesn't want someone like me." Luke shook his head. "The world's wrong. I've seen strength twisted into shame before. You're not the problem." His tone was firm now, unshakable. Her breath hitched. No one had ever defended her without expecting something in return. She stared at him, trying to understand why he cared. "You shouldn't get close to me," she warned. "I don't know how to be what people want." Luke's reply was simple. "Then be who you are." His voice carried a warmth that thawed something frozen in her. She stepped back suddenly, overwhelmed, bumping into the table behind her. The lantern wobbled, and Luke moved quickly to steady it before it fell. Elena froze, expecting a lecture or anger. Instead, Luke gently set the lantern down and returned his gaze to her. "See, nothing broke. Not you, not the world." She blinked, confused by a kindness she wasn't prepared to accept. The storm rattled the windows as she wrapped her arms around herself. "I came here because they wanted to get rid of me," she murmured. "I thought being someone's bride would make me worth something. But they only wanted me gone." Luke's jaw clenched, fury silent but burning. "Then they're fools," he said. "A woman like you deserves more than scraps of affection." Her chest rose sharply, emotion hitting her like a wave. For the first time, She stepped toward him instead of away. "Why are you being so gentle?" she whispered. Luke met her eyes. "Because you've never had someone be." Her breath broke. That answer was too honest, too soft, too dangerous. She felt warmth spreading through her ribs like sunlight after endless winter. He extended a hand. Not demanding, not pulling, just offering. "Let me in, Elena." Even a little. She stared at his hand, trembling, as if touching it might collapse the fragile wall she had built. "If I let you in," she whispered, "everything might change." Luke nodded gently. "Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen." Her fingers brushed his, hesitant, shaking. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone in the dark. And Luke felt something shift inside him too, something he had buried under dust and silence. The giant bride and the lonely cowboy stood together as the storm raged outside, unaware that tonight would mark the beginning of everything neither of them believed they deserved. The storm slowly softened, but inside the cabin, the air grew heavier with the weight of truths unspoken. Elena stood close enough to feel Luke's breath, yet far enough that fear still clung to her like frost. Her hand rested in his only for a moment before she pulled back, swallowing the warmth too quickly. She stepped away, pacing as if trying to outrun her past. Luke watched quietly, giving her space but not distance. He could sense she was fighting something she had carried for years, something that threatened to drown her even now. Elena stopped near the window, her reflection barely visible in the dark glass. "Luke," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you don't know the worst part." Luke stayed still, waiting, his eyes steady. She closed her eyes. "I wasn't sent here to marry you because they wanted me gone. I was sent here because they believed you'd be too kind to reject me." Her voice cracked with shame. "I wasn't a gift. I was a burden they wanted to hide." Luke's breath tightened, but he didn't speak. She wasn't done. She pressed her palms against her face. "I thought coming here would make me finally useful. That maybe if I worked hard enough, stayed silent enough, you wouldn't send me back." Tears filled her voice. "But I don't know how to be a bride. I don't know how to be wanted." Luke stepped toward her slowly, his boots scraping softly across the wooden floor. "Elena," he said gently, "you're not here because they didn't want you. You're here because fate decided I needed someone strong enough to break the silence I was hiding behind." Her shoulders shook. "I break things," she whispered. "Not silence." Luke shook his head. "You break walls, especially the ones we shouldn't leave behind." She turned to him, startled by his certainty. He took another step closer. "You weren't a burden delivered to my doorstep. You were a miracle I didn't think I'd ever receive." The word miracle hit her like a blow softened by tenderness. No one had ever used such a word for her. Luke lifted a hand slowly, letting her see every movement before he placed it gently against her arm. She flinched but didn't step away. His touch was warm, grounding her. "You think I don't want you?" he whispered. "Elena, I've wanted someone to stay for years. Someone who understands loneliness the way I do." Her breath caught, chest rising too fast. "I don't know how to stay," she confessed. "I've only ever learned how to survive." Luke nodded. "Then survive with me. We'll figure out the rest together." Her eyes filled, the tears unshed but shimmering like frost catching light. Luke's voice softened, deep and certain. "You're not too much. You're not broken. You're not wrong." She inhaled sharply, overwhelmed by the kindness she had never believed she deserved. "Why do you speak like that?" she asked. Luke smiled sadly. "Because I know what it feels like to think you're unlovable. And I won't let you live in that lie anymore." She took a single step toward him, then another, until she was close enough that he could feel the trembling in her chest. "Luke," she whispered, "I'm scared." He met her eyes. "Me too," he admitted. "But fear isn't a reason to walk away. It's a reason to hold on." Her gaze searched his, looking for judgment, for disappointment, for anything familiar from her past. Instead, she found warmth, a warmth strong enough to melt something frozen in her. And then, for the first time, Elena leaned into him. Not gently, not timidly, she collapsed into his arms like someone who had been holding the sky alone for years. Luke caught her easily, his arms wrapping around her with a strength she didn't expect. She trembled, her tears soaking into his shirt, and he held her like nothing else mattered. "I'm here," he whispered into her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Minutes passed with the storm outside fading into quiet snowfall. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but brighter than he had ever seen. "What happens now?" she whispered. Luke brushed a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle against her strong jaw. "Now," he said softly, "we build something that belongs to us, not to the people who hurt you." Elena looked around the small cabin, once a lonely man's shelter, now a fragile beginning for two broken souls learning to heal. She nodded slowly. "I can try," she whispered. "That's all I need," Luke replied. He reached for her hand again, and this time, she didn't pull away. She let his fingers intertwine with hers, steady and warm. A soft knock suddenly echoed on the door, rare for a night like this. Elena stiffened, but Luke squeezed her hand gently before opening it. Outside stood a small boy from the distant ranch, shivering with a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Mama said you might need this," he said. Luke unwrapped it, a handcrafted star carved from wood, polished and simple. "For your tree," the boy said shyly before running back through the snow. Elena touched the wooden star, her voice soft with wonder. "A Christmas star," she whispered. Luke handed it to her. "Place it," he said. "It belongs to you too." She hesitated, then lifted the star and gently set it atop the small pine tree in the corner. As the lantern flickered against it, the star glowed faintly, casting warm shadows across the room. Luke stepped behind her, his presence steady. "Elena," he said quietly, "look." She turned to him. "This cabin wasn't a home until you walked in." Her chest tightened, but this time the emotion didn't hurt, it healed. "I've never had a home," she whispered. Luke shook his head. "You do now." The warmth in the room grew, not from the fire, but from the fragile, beautiful truth settling between them. Elena took a breath, slow and steady, and for the first time, she smiled. Not a small smile, not hesitant, an honest, gentle smile that reached her eyes. Luke felt his heart shift, finally unlonely after years of silence. Snowflakes drifted softly outside as Christmas Eve settled into calm. Elena leaned her head against Luke's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her with quiet certainty. Two souls, once abandoned in different ways, now found themselves standing together under a wooden star. And for the first time in both their lives, the night ended not in fear, not in loneliness, but in the warm, undeniable beginning of something that felt like love, and a home neither of them thought they'd ever deserve.